lovely good morning to you all viewers. Welcome to another exciting edition of the Camnet TV Breakfast Show. I'm your host, Miriam Kaima, and of course, today on Wednesday, we always ensure that we look at current affairs. And of course, in studio, I'm not alone. I'm joined by my handsome colleague, Patrick Soko. But we do apologize for starting the show a bit late. This was due to some technicals beyond our control. Anyway, we are here to ensure that, we bring you nothing but the best. And later on at 8 hours, we'll be joined by a guest in studio where we're going to be looking at various issues, among them issues that are affecting constituencies in Zambia. Good morning.
Good morning, Miriam Kaimba.
How are you?
Fine, and how are you?
I'm fine.
Is it a positive Wednesday?
I'm glad you asked that question because I was about to ask you the same. It is a positive Wednesday indeed.
The eye still giving you problems?
Not really, but staying up late, waking up early, I think, yeah. But we are trying our best. Yeah.
Child, you need to see an eye specialist.
No, I don't want to find myself in a situation where I'll have 4 eyes.
But I foresee that coming soon.
Soko, please stop with your prediction. I don't want those predictions, but anyway, it's a positive Wednesday. We'll ensure that we bring you nothing but the best in terms of what is happening in our country. And those who are watching us live on Facebook, you can take part in our conversation by dropping us a message. And those who are watching us in the comfort of your home, you too can take part in our conversation this morning, but by calling us through the numbers that are on your screen. Yeah.
Indeed, you can join us on the breakfast show this morning. Governance, policy and politics is what we focus on, and want to hear from you, our dear viewers. What are your comments and contribution pertaining to some of the stories we'll be looking at later on the program? But to just get started, let's have a look at the health corner with the doctors.
Good morning, viewers. I'm Dr. Nancy Mbasela from the Medical Women Association of Zambia. This week on Health Talk, we are talking about lupus. Lupus is a chronic autoimmune disease. So by chronic, we've said it's long-standing. It comes in flare-up. So you have symptoms, they get managed. And then when you have stress, through smoking, you can get symptoms again. We also mentioned that lupus is an autoimmune disease, which means that your body sees your cells, your organs, and other parts of your body as foreign entities and attacks those parts of the body. One thing we discussed yesterday was systemic lupus erythematosus. We said it affects Africans the most. It also affects women the most. That is, 90% of cases are in women of childbearing age. We discussed that lupus can present in different ways because it's systemic, so it affects different parts of the body. So we spoke that the patient can present with brain problems such as seizures, a stroke. They can present with heart problems such as heart failure. They can present with kidney problems, kidney failure, hypertension. They can present with blood problems, anemia and bleeding. And they can also present with immunological problems. And in more times than one, they present with a rash. One thing I want to emphasize about the rash today is that another reason that can cause a flare-up is being in the sun for too long. So if you have lupus, make sure you take measures, wear clothes that cover most of your body parts. Make sure that you wear sunscreen because UV light can also cause flare-ups. So today we are going to talk about discoid lupus erythematosus. So discoid lupus erythematosus mainly affects the skin. It is not like systemic lupus erythematosus. But of note is that some of the patients with discoid lupus erythematosus can present with systemic lupus erythematosus later. So discoid lupus erythematosus also affects African blacks, Latinas, Asians more than it affects Caucasians. It is less severe than systemic lupus erythematosus. Usually how the patients present is they have rash on the face and the scalp. So this rash usually comes in a round form, and then it sometimes forms scales. One thing about this rash is that it leaves scars. So where there is scarring, especially on the scalp, these patients may present with alopecia because its hair cannot grow on that scar. So when it comes to diagnosis, it can also be diagnosed. It is diagnosed the same way that we diagnose systemic lupus erythematosus. There are blood tests that can be done to diagnose it. The treatment is also the same. It can be treated the same way we treat systemic lupus erythematosus. So if you have symptoms of discoid lupus erythematosus, that is a rash that comes as a round rash that forms scales, and also on your scalp. It can also happen on your limbs, but usually it's on the face and the scalp. Please visit a hospital. There are chances that you may also get systemic lupus erythematosus, which is a more dangerous form of lupus that can lead to death, especially when diagnosed late and treatment is started late. So go to the nearest hospital and make sure you are screened if you have any of these symptoms. If you have this form of lupus, make sure that you wear clothes that cover places that are usually exposed to the sun. Make sure you wear sunscreen. If you smoke, of all lupus forms, this one is mostly affected by smoking. If you smoke, please quit smoking. Then if there's a lot of stress in your life, try as much as possible to avoid or minimize it in order to avoid flare-up. Thank you so much for joining me. We'll continue to discuss lupus in the next 2 days. Thank you.
A lovely good morning once again to those of you who are just joining us. It's Patrick Soko and Miriam Kayemba. MP is our combination, and we are always with you from Monday to Wednesday to just give you nothing but infotainment, and especially in the area of information we do not disappoint and want to update you regarding some of the stories that are making the headlines. Miriam Kayemba, are you willing to tell us how the kwacha is performing?
Exactly. Let's go direct into our money market. So we have the United States dollar. They are buying at 20 kwacha 86 ngwe and selling at 20 kwacha 27 ngwe. We have the Great British Pound. They are buying at 26 kwacha 02 ngwe and selling at 26 kwacha 53 ngwe. We have the euro. They are buying at 22 kwacha 36 ngwe and selling at 22 kwacha 80 ngwe. We have the South African rand. They are buying at 1 kwacha 10 ngwe and selling at 1 kwacha 12 ngwe. That is our foreign exchange for today, the 13th of September 2023. We have seen that on the buying side, on the dollar, we're heading toward 22 kwacha, as well as on the buying part where it's going toward 21 kwacha. Yeah, just some few cents.
Indeed.
I know. I know. Don't comment for today. I won't allow you to comment. Yeah, I won't allow you to comment. Anyway, just a reminder to our viewers who are watching us this morning that we have now officially opened our phone lines. You, our viewers, can take part in our conversation this morning, where we are looking at various stories that made headlines in our news yesterday. And later on in studio, we'll be joined by a special guest who is Loana area member of parliament, to help us discuss various issues that are happening in his constituency, among other issues that are affecting our country. But then we're moving forward to some of the stories that made the headline in our news yesterday. We did see a story where the University of Zambia historian Bizek Piri has urged the Patriotic Front to host its extraordinary convention to elect leaders if the party is to survive in the opposition. In an interview with Camnet, he says PF in its form does not have a formal structure to legitimate leaders, will only be in a place after the convention. Meanwhile, Matera area member of parliament Mr. Mao Sampa, who is also PF presidential candidate, has vowed to explore legal action against Mr. Given Lubinda and Raphael Nakachita for what he terms to be contempt of court after the former appointed the latter, among others, to party position amidst a court injunction. Quite interesting story. Yesterday we were looking at this same particular story, Patrick, where we did see the previous day that Mr. Raphael Nakachinda, who was the former information and publicity chairperson for the opposition Patriotic Front, was appointed as the new Secretary General for the party. And then we did see also Mr. Mao Sampa, making some claims there that, this is contempt and it's against, it's against the law, because he has, taken a petition before the Lusaka High Court, where he's challenging that, the party should go ahead and hold its convention, because at the moment they do not have leaders. That is according to what he says. However, we have seen that before the courts of law, Mr. Luinda, among others who have been petitioned by Mr. Mao Sampa, have argued that, the PF is not lacking. PF already has leaders at the moment, but we're talking about the party going to its convention and holding, electing leaders. Yeah.
Indeed, because that was one of the commitments, and they have been they did assure the nation on that, and they did set dates. Though they have continued to adjourn the dates, and we're seeing that even the one for October, they are unlikely to meet it. So that tells you also the seriousness they are attaching to this important national issue. They are not attaching any seriousness. So, but accountability, regardless of whether you are in government or in opposition, accountability and transparency are fundamental for good governance. So now, if themselves they do not want to demonstrate intra-party democracy, how are they going to guarantee that? And how does that reflect the good rebranding process? So I think those are the questions the leaders have to be answering, because they are being challenged based on that. So while you are also holding accountable those that are in office now, being the UPND, you also have to be accountable for your organization. Yeah, you understand. Yeah, you have to make sure that you are also put your house in order. Like Professor Bizek Piri did allude to that, Miriam. The PF is not a small organization. It is Zambia's major opposition political party by numbers in the House, and also by the results of the 2021 general election. They were the second from the UPND. So it is obvious that they are a big opposition political party in this country. And the provision of checks and balances credible for that matter, is important for any democracy to thrive. Now, if you are not putting your house in order, how do you then try to come to the nation and start making those demands? So even them, they have to be held accountable.
Exactly.
And just like Professor Bizek Piri said, they have to make sure that they put up a leadership in place. But we have to listen to what Professor Piri did say in that story done by Athias Kaptula. Let's have a look.
Renowned historian Bizek Piri has urged the Patriotic Front PF to hold its general conference in order to elect new legitimate leaders into the party leadership. Professor Piri says currently PF is an informal organization with people of like minds coming together. On Monday, the holding of the long-awaited event was cast in further doubt when acting President Kevin Lubinda could not give an exact date for the convention.
As the date when we should have held the constitutional conference. Unfortunately, that date coincided with Mutomboko and the celebration of the centenary of Minga Mission. And we put off that constitutional conference. The Central Committee is yet to sit to decide on the sequencing of the two.
Speaking in an interview with Camnet News in a phone interview, Professor Piri says the party should practice democracy as it aims to remain a vibrant opposition political party in the country.
Where they are not coming up with elected leaders, that actually weakens the party. So what I can say is that this is sometimes what is to former parties actually collapsing and going into opposition.
Okay.
So in other words, what I'm saying is that let the PF go to a convention, elect leaders, and those groups, they should not say because I've lost it, I've left the party. No, they should be committed to their party, and they should be focusing on what is it that we can do to get back power and form a government. But at the state at which they are, they can't, because it's like it's just a collection of individuals supporting each other very well. So that is a serious challenge for politics.
Taking to social media late Monday afternoon, outspoken Patriotic Front PF Material Member of Parliament Mao Sampa vowed to take on the current PF leadership for what he terms contempt of court.
And Honorable Linda, who is facing a contempt on the same matter, decides to appoint another one, Honorable Nakachinda, who is facing a contempt. So it's double contempt. If they are found guilty, then they will say the courts are what? This case is under Judge Katenekwa, and those who have interest should follow up. I've asked my lawyer to guide me when is the next hearing.
For Camnet News, Athias Kaptula, Lusaka.
It is a double contempt, as said by one Mao Sampa, the Patriotic Front aspiring president, also assuring what he knows best, and that's taking legal action.
Because you should understand that, he has moved into court and cited Mr. Lubinda for contempt of court. So he's saying for the action or decision, the move made by Mr. Lubinda, who is the vice president of the party at the moment, is contempt for him to go ahead and, appoint Mr. Nakachinda as the new Secretary General for the party. But this also shows you one thing, that there's no coordination in the party. Patrick, it tells you that there's total confusion. Okay, this is where, like you earlier mentioned, you did allude to a statement that there's need for them to put their house in order, because this is the biggest opposition political party that we have currently at the moment. And also we should not also forget the fact that we have other different opposition political parties which are emerging now. And again, we have seen that majority of the people from the Patriotic Front, after losing the 2021 general elections, others have transitioned, or rather moved, to the Socialist Party. So a lot of people are start questioning, is it because of this confusion now that people are now leaving this party? Okay, and also the other thing that people should be worried about is, in as much as yes, you want to criticize the current administration of the day, what is it that you're doing yourselves to put yourself in check? Okay, with
Indeed.
these confusion that are going on.
Indeed, intra-party democracy is fundamental because, Miriam, if you're failing to take care of yourself, how do you then convince me that I should take care of myself? I think that is just obvious. So if I say, oh, probably Miriam, what is that she's advising? Probably makes sense because she's really taking care of herself. So now in an event, you're telling somebody things you don't do yourself. So I think we did hear one of the UPND officials who is a nominated member of Parliament, Likando Mufaladi, when we hosted him here on this platform, he did made some comments that there's also need for them to make sure that they get organized, and that is an obvious requirement. They need to get organized because they've been preaching about something that is not happening, the rebranding process. They have been preaching about the holding of a convention. What is happening? We have hosted people at the lower levels of the party who have suggested that they're not happy with the way the party is undertaking activities, and that they should consult the grassroots on what they would want to see for the party going forward.
Exactly.
Now, let's also have a look at another story, Miriam, where the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia has called on the government to cancel the alleged appointment of French ambassador designate to Zambia on allegation of same-sex marriages, which are not allowed in this country. So let's have a look at this story, and we'll be back. And remember that the phone lines will be open and want to interact with you, our dear viewers, on the stories that we are looking at this morning. Wherever you are watching us from, keep it on Camnet TV, not just another channel.
Not heard me. We did not go there to talk about lesbian rights. We did not go there for that. We did not go there for what I've just said. This is the point I want to make, and make emphatically. No one went for an agenda of those issues. The Constitution provides for those issues.
Despite this stance, issues relating to same-sex marriages in Zambia have for a long time sparked debate on what values the country stands for. Successive governments have tested the bitterness of resolving this issue. Politicians advance the issue to discrediting one another, while such acts are considered normal in other countries. In Zambia, it is illegal. As such, the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia has advised the government to cancel the alleged appointment of a French ambassador designated to Zambia on allegations of same-sex marriages. Bishop Mwenda says such acts compromise the beliefs of Zambia.
So forth, we cannot accept that. We know and we have the information that this gentleman, he is a man and he is married to a fellow man, and as Zambia we don't believe that is right. We believe that it goes against first and foremost the values of this country, of this nation rather, of the people of Zambia. It's not right. The second thing is that the President of the Republic of Zambia sought to protect the Constitution of Zambia, and it's against the Constitution, against the law, or the highest law of this country.
Opposition Citizens First President Harry Kalaba adds his view with a caution for the current administration to act on the matter or review any alleged conditionalities attached to the appointment of a French ambassador designate to Zambia.
Zambia might be poor, but Zambia must safeguard its territorial integrity. Zambia must safeguard its Christian values. Zambia must safeguard its constitution. And the number one person to safeguard the interests of this country must be the president. So anything that is going to allow Mr. Maffei in our country, we will take it that this is the new dawn UPND policy, that homosexuality in this country can be accepted, because then they are accepting a homosexual, open homosexual guy to come and become an ambassador from France. They must reject this. And if their conditionality is tied to such kind of things, it's high time that the government reviewed those conditionalities and backed out, because we will not support that.
When reached for a comment, Ministry of Foreign Affairs could not provide a response to this journalist. In September 2022, Minister of Home Affairs and Internal Security Chuck Mwimbu announced the arrest of 18 people for same-sex activity. According to the Penal Code of Zambia, Section 158 criminalizes acts of gross indecency both between men and between women, with a maximum. According to the Penal Code of Zambia, Section 158 criminalizes acts of gross indecency both between men and between women with a maximum penalty of 14 years imprisonment. Nelson Zulu for Camnet News, Lusaka.
Thank you very much. That's a story coming from the Evangelical Fellowship of Zambia, as well as the Citizens First Party President Hari Kalaba, talking about issues bordering on the appointment of the French ambassador designate to Zambia, whom they say is a compromised person in line with the laws of this country. Hence, the government should not endorse his credentials, and he should not be entertained to be represent that country in this country. So you too, or dear viewers, in case you want to join the conversation, we want to hear from you. You can give us your comments on what we are just looking at this morning, and some of the stories that we have actually looked at. You can equally call us and give us that call, and then we get interrupting and want to hear from you. But before that, I want us to also look at a story where the Zambia Congress of Trade Unions, ZCTU, says it is concerned with the non-implementation of the minimum wage revised by the Ministry of Labor in 2022. ZCTU President Blake Mulala says it is unfair that domestic workers have continued getting the same low salaries in the biting economy. In December last year, government through the Ministry of Labor and Social Security advised upwards the minimum wages for domestic workers to 1,300 kwacha, and shopkeepers and general workers was revised to 2,700 kwacha. Let's have a look at this story.
In December of 2022, government, through the Minister of Labor and Social Security, revised upwards the minimum wages for domestic workers, shopkeepers and general workers. Minister of Labor and Social Security, Brenda Tambatamba, informed the nation that in accordance with the statutory instrument number 69 of Domestic Workers Order of 2018, the gross pay for domestic workers would move from 993 kwacha 16 ngwe to 1,300 kwacha. She added that statutory instrument number 70 of Shopkeepers Order of 2018, drivers, sales assistants and packers would earn a gross pay of 2,722 kwacha 57 ngwe from 1,994 kwacha 14 ngwe. The revised minimum wage was to be in effect beginning January 2023. However, over 7 months later, the minimum wage has not been implemented this far.
The most problem in life from Zambia, labor laws, tilibe. We are working to Indian people, but they are giving us 1.5 as a drive. Which can't. If you complain that no, we have already bought the laws of Zambia. So we are now, we are not caring, but we are just speaking because our leaders, what they have, they don't follow, they are loose. They are acting challenge. They come as women, as people who can help us, but after giving them jobs, they are out of us. So we don't know where we are going. We just the hand of God in this land of Zambia.
Zambia Congress of Trade Unions ZCTU President Blake Mulala is cognizant of this matter.
We also await to hear from government because this is a government-driven, though not alone, but with the tripartite partners. And these are trade unions where we are coming from, and the other stakeholders are the Federation of Employers. So we await to hear from government as to when this minimum wage is going to be implemented. And it's also of interest to us because we know that the members who fall under this category, it has been quite too long, since 2018 when we had the last review of it.
The cost of living for a family of 5 in Lusaka, as measured by the Jesuit Center for Theological Reflection JCTR for the month of August 2023 is at 9,267 kwacha 34 ngwe, and yet no stringent measures to improve the cost of living have been outlined by powers that be. Vincent Piri for Camnet TV News, Lusaka.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us on the Camnet Breakfast Show. Interesting story there on the minimum wage. We understand that the Ministry of Labor and Social Security had revised upwards the minimum wages, but they were suspended in terms of implementation and deferred to August, and we just winded up the month of August last month. Yeah. So now we are wondering to say, when is it going to be effected? We await to hear from the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. And we saw the Zambia Congress of Trade Unions ZCTU highlighting their concern pertaining to that issue. Now, in the wake of the high cost of living, the surging inflation, it is obvious that the workers' wages are improved because if their buying power has declined, because if you have been earning the same money, you see how the kwacha, when you were reading out the how the kwacha is performing this morning, it is on 21 against $1, and that tells you how difficult it is on the ground. Inflation is at a staggering 2-digit, and that is also not good. It shows you that the levels at which prices of commodities are increasing. So now that if the wages of the workers, especially those in that category, the general workers, if they are not safeguarded, they risk being condemned into poverty and destitution. So we have to make sure that that is enforced, because if you see the prices of commodities are increasing, the prices of fuel continues to increase, and
your
we
salary
are
is
saying, and
stagnant.
the salary is stagnant. What does that mean then? Then more people will be thrown into the poverty line.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that more people are moved out of the poverty line. But if we're not going to be making sure that the wages are moving in tandem with the increase in the cost of living, then it means that they were doing nothing as a country but compelling more and more people into just having, for instance, a single meal per day, because probably you may not adjust owing to the earnings that you have that may be limited. So if we are to address those issues as a country, we need to pay attention and make sure that we seek to also improve the plight of workers. At the end of the day, one worker usually takes care of the many people. So if the plight of workers is safeguarded, I don't think people would even be complaining about the high cost of living. But we are in a situation where, for example, when the high cost of living or high cost of commodities is increasing, the buying power for workers and citizens in general is reducing. So sometimes government has also undertaken good gestures of, for example, giving workers an increment.
Exactly.
They'll say a 10% increment, for example, for argument's sake. But again, if the cost of living continues to increase, it takes over that that percentage, that allocation. So it is something really we need to look at, so that probably they should be balancing the salaries and everything. And when we are comparing to other countries, that's something we haven't paid attention to, because in other countries, the workers are earning more money.
More money,
so if, for example, they are buying mini meal at an exorbitant price, it does not matter. It is within their range of being able to pay. But in an event, you are earning less money, and for example, the price of a commodity like mini meal or cooking oil is higher, you will feel the pressure, and you will be compelled to complain. But in an event you are earning more, do you have to complain? Like in this economy, there are people, who do not mind whether you put a bag of meal at 1,000 kwacha, because they'll still buy.
Exactly.
But there are those, when you put it at 1,000 kwacha, they won't even think about buying a bag of meal, because it means that if a pamela will be now costing at 1,000 kwacha, would be costing 100 kwacha.
Yeah.
You see? So that's just something that if you look at when we're comparing to other countries, we need to avoid. We have to look at the income inequalities. How are there any income inequalities in that countries? How is the income inequality in Zambia? If you look at the income inequality in Zambia, based on the reports that we were done previously, it is too high. So you find that the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. So now, how do we strike a balance to make sure that there's an equilibrium between these two classes?
And when you're talking about the poor getting more poor, you have to also think about how we are moving. Are we moving in the right trajectory as a country, in ensuring that by 2030 we become a middle-income prosperous country, and also achieve the Sustainable Development Goal #1, which talks about ending poverty in all forms and everywhere. So we need to strike a balance all in all at the end of the day, so that no one is left behind as we achieve that 2030 agenda.
Interesting. Indeed, keep those comments coming on our Facebook page as we continue to look at some of the stories that we have. And let's get to look at another story.
Let's get to look at a story where the Christian Democratic Party has accused President Hakainde Hichilema of avoiding to repeal the Public Order Act to continue using the piece of legislation to curtail freedom of the opposition in the country. Let's get to look at this story.
The Christian Democratic Party, CDP, has joined some stakeholders in condemning the cancellation of a church service that was planned to host former President Edgar Lungu over the weekend on the Copper Belt. CDP Party President Daniel Pule has termed the incident as selective application of the Public Order Act, calling on the church in the country to condemn the act.
As CDP, we condemn the selective application of the Public Order Act against those sympathetic to the opposition. In particular, the former President Edgar Lungu. We call upon the Zambian clergy and the church to remain united and to stand together in the face of this persecution by the apparent policy state of President Hakainde Hichilema.
Speaking during a press conference Tuesday, Dr. Pule accused President Hakainde Hichilema of avoiding to repeal and replace the Public Order Act.
Mention here that our party officials mobilizing for our party in Chadiza this morning have had to hide because of the interference of the UPND cadres together with their chairman, who even summoned our officials who are organizing these meetings for us in Chadiza and Eastern Province.
Meanwhile, Dr. Pule has urged President Hakainde Hichilema to reject appointed French ambassador to Zambia, Jean Mafat, as he is a non-homosexual, which is a legal act in Zambia.
It's going to create problems. And it will, I know he has the numbers in Parliament, but that is a basis for impeachment if he allows a non-clear case of an homosexual man married to a man to come and be accredited to Zambia.
For Camnet News, Hafias Kaptula, Lusaka.
Quite interesting views there. We have seen that the Public Order Act has been a source of concern for quite some time. Before the election, we did see various various stakeholders, including opposition political leaders, coming on board. Among them, the current administration saying once they're in office, they will ensure that this piece of legislation is worked on. But now it's 2 years down the line, and we haven't seen this, being tabled before Parliament.
Yeah, we are just keeping our fingers closed, hoping that that will be tabled in this sitting of Parliament. Though this is a tricky sitting of Parliament in that it is a budget session. So we hope that it will be squeezed. That's like we are hoping that the access to information bill will be squeezed in this sitting so that it can equally be enacted. We were assured that it was going to be enacted in this session. And we hope it to be taken before Parliament, just like the public gatherings bill. We want it to be enacted into law. And we hope that the stakeholders have been given the necessary checks and balances to that bill, Miriam, because if you look at it, we are hoping that that bill addresses some of the issues that this current act has. Exactly. So that as opposed to, we may be doing a revision and we are going back to the same thing. So we can only hope that this time around when we are dealing with this, we'll deal with it once and for all, because almost every administration that has come into office has made attempts to revise the public gatherings bill, but nothing much has come out of that. Even the same Patriotic Front who were being accused of infringing on the rights of opposition political parties in the country, they did make some attempts to revise the Public Order Act, but it did not come to fruition. And there has been a saying that successive government enjoy the privileges that law comes with in terms of stifling those in the opposition. So we can only hope that the UPND, just like President Hakainde Hichilema has assured us on several platforms, that he is keen to see the country upholding the rule of law and making sure that it operates within the tenets of democracy. So our only assumption is that this country will move in that trajectory and probably do away with some of the archaic laws that were orchestrated by our colonial masters to limit us as Africans from undertaking activities. But do we need to still infringe on each other when we are one people? So these are some of the conversations that we want to see being driven to see how we'll go with how far we'll go with the revision of the Public Gatherings Bill. As journalists, we cannot always shy away with when lobbying for the access to information law on behalf of the citizens, because transparency and accountability are key fundamentals of governance. So when we are looking at the access to information, it is crucial for citizens to be aware of whatever undertaking a government is involved in terms of how the government is contracting debt, in terms of how some of these issues have been negotiations and of a memorandum of understanding. So when we have the access to information law, we expect that there will be more information being given to the people in terms of not hiding to them, so that they know that whatever the leaders in office are doing is to safeguard their interest.
Exactly, quite interesting. In case you've just tuned to the Camnet TV Breakfast Show, we are looking at this morning some of the stories that made headlines in our news. Among them, what Patrick Soko is just from articulating, which is with regard to the Public Order Act. Earlier on, we did look at a story where the opposition Patriotic Front presidential aspirant candidate Mausamba says he's going to take action against what he terms as contempt of court after he did see Mr. Given Lubinda appointing Mr. Raphael Nakachinda as the new Secretary General for the party. But you, our viewers who is watching us this morning, can take part in our conversation and give us your take on whether you think the Patriotic Front is in the right trajectory in its rebranding process. Give us what you think, given the fact that this is the biggest opposition political party that we have in the country at the moment. And we're moving forward. We also did see a story where a mental health activist has observed that the lack of priorities in addressing mental health issues in the country by the Ministry of Health. Namatama Lubinda says there is a need to realign the country's mental health agenda and says the upcoming recruitment of 3,000 health workers does not show a priority of mental health officers being part of the exercise. Let's get to look at that story.
First of all, I'd like to commend the government for the move on recruiting health workers and also for including those clinical officers in psychiatry who have diplomas. But there is a huge gap in this, because what happens to those with degrees, the medical licentiates in psychiatry? And also, I think the move is not completely helpful, because who is going to regulate these jobs? There is a need to have provincial representatives, district representatives in terms of mental health, because even if they are recruiting these mental health workers, besides even mental health nurses haven't been listed on that recruitment plan. So who is supposed to work hand in hand with those clinical officers, psychiatry, that they are recruiting? There is need for more seriousness from the Ministry of Health. We understand that they are doing something, but they are not doing enough.
To go in the details, even medical doctors, there are psychiatrists in there. Because even those clustered numbers like doctors, some of them are psychiatrists. So the numbers may not be adequate for everyone, but this is something to buy.
Education is for all. So do not feel threatened. Do not feel ashamed. Do not be embarrassed. Education is an equalizer. Even in your old age, anyone can pick it up and learn, because the benefits of education are immense. The moment you break through to literacy, you are able to read, you are able to write, you are able to interpret things for yourselves, just basic things through literacy. You would find that the world will be a peaceful society to live in.
Continued in homes, and this is why now, coming out of COVID, as we celebrate now the Literacy Week, we are saying we need to ensure that we go the blended learning way. because then through blended learning, we will invest both in the face-to-face as well as in the alternative modes of education provision that entail us providing education in the homes to people through radio, through television, and also through online platforms. That becomes very, very important if we are to make our education system resilient.
Thank you very much, and thank you for staying with us on the Camnet Breakfast Show. Me, myself, and I, Patrick Soko and Miriam Kaimba, and we're looking at some of the stories making the headlines, and we want you to continue interacting with you, audio viewers, and thank you for choosing us. And well, that's a story pertaining to blended education, where ZANEC and the Ministry of Education are expressing their perspective on that subject, on the need to continue to explore literacy. You are never too old for education. You can still learn to read and write. It is important.
It's very, very
how
important.
do you read the Bible? So sometimes when you learn, you'll be able to read the Bible on your own.
Exactly, and most of the people would, try not to put much, effort or seriousness to this, attach much seriousness to this, because I think, or because I go at church and the pastor will read the Bible on my behalf. But there's need for you to read the Bible so that you connect with God and understand exactly what the Bible is talking about. And not only that, you find that your day-to-day activities is all about reading and understanding. So if you do not know how to read or understand certain things, it becomes very hard for you, to blend in. Because you find that, Patrick, you go maybe at the bank, you don't know what to do certain things, and you're scammed, okay? And that's the more reason why you find 95% of the people who have been scammed, and the stories that you yourself and I have done, you'll find that a lot of people, they did not have their understanding of these things. Yeah.
You are right when you talk about literacy. So when you talk about literacy, it's very wide. So literacy there, if you are a literate person, you'll be able to interpret some of these things. You say, I think this documentation likes a right signature or likes the right stamp. I think you are trying to scam me. Why do you want me to sign on this document? You'll be able to detect, But if you are illiterate, it becomes difficult. It is never too late to explore those ventures. Camnet school, GCE, all those things. Let's continue to explore education, because education never ends. And besides,
and it's the best equalizer.
Equalizer, yes. So when we are able to read for ourselves, we get that confidence. You understand? If we are able to do certain things for ourselves, we are able to feel comfortable. Not everything.
Exactly.
All those things. Sometimes you can do it yourself, but it's never too late. You can learn. Sometimes these courses, they just take a short period of time, like just 6 months.
Exactly.
You are equipped.
You're equipped, and you have the necessary, mindset that you need, the skills, the knowledge, to combine it with your daily activities of life.
Exactly. Those are things that we need to be paying attention to. So interesting enough, those of you watching us via Facebook, we thank you and we value your contribution and support. But always remember to always tune to Camnet TV at 07 hours sharp to just join the breakfast show. You can equally invite others and share the broadcast, as well as leave us that message, because we are always happy to hear from you, like our comrade Machida from the sweetest town of Mazabuka. We always enjoy hearing from you. And Miriam Kamba was just assuring me to say, okay, we'll be giving a bundle to our viewers. So they should reward them with a bundle.
Exactly. He's ever watching us. I love the commitment, and it makes we are glad that we can create a platform where people feel that they are part of this conversation. Basically, that is what we do. That is our core existence in the first place, that we create a platform where people feel this is their show, that they need to contribute and tell us what is it that they feel that needs to be changed at a particular time in their constituency, all those issues surrounding the country.
Indeed, this platform is open whatever challenges you may be facing in your community, in your localities. We want to hear from you. But right about now, let's take a look at a story where traders operating at the frontage of the city center of the Center for the Infectious Disease Research in Zambia CIDRS complex in Lusaka, IBEX, have appealed to the institution to exercise lenience on his decision to have them removed from the area. So let's have a look at this story. We'll be back shortly.
Some traders conducting their business at the frontage of the Center for Infectious Disease Research in Zambia, Sidus Complex in Lusaka's Ibex Hill, have appealed to the institution not to remove them from the area. The appeals come in the wake of an eviction notice from the Lusaka City Council LCC dated 8th September for the traders to vacate the area as their structures were erected illegally. However, the aggrieved traders tells Camnet TV News that the move by the council emanated from a complaint by Sidus to LCC to have them removed, but should reconsider the decision.
Monga ine pano na 6 years nikulisa chepa mene pano. Njapa jesera vana. Vili vonse veningafune nipamine apa parodi. So vakatipisha kuli beko enda. So wa Sidus vamene ndio amene tingapemphe chabe kuti vatiganizireko.
Kometi ngambe kugulisirako. Dani bakambati no batipishe. Kuno kuli bantu bali bakala ko mayezi na mayezi. Wena ngoni ma 7 years, wena ngo 5 years. Then wena ngoni ma widows. Bapunsa na bana masiye kwamene kuno. So ngati makambati mutipishe tsenda kuti. Nanga wazimai walibe wazimuna bazashita survive bwanji.
The traders say there is no market in the area where they can conduct their trade, and Sidus should consider reallocating them the Far East frontage to conduct their trade.
So what we are asking from Sidus, we are begging. We understand that this land doesn't belong to us. It's a front of the offices of the Sidus. So we are asking if Sidus, they can consider us to remove us from the front of the offices so that they can give us another place there. There's another place there where we can start trading. But if they remove us completely, we have no market. There's no market in Mtendere East, there's no market in Ibex.
Ngati ndine na mwana wa college. Timatandizana na mdara ngati veve washota na ine na watandizana. So reda hapa nabwera 6 pin anani malipira every tape. So manje wakatipisha wakateresa kugulisa. Nishi wajabana kuskuru wazareka.
Karikiriki area councillor Shadrack Mwanza has echoed the plea of the traders.
So I think the only appeal that I may make to Sidus is that they should look for a way of help assisting those people, because Sidus is an organization that is there to assist the people, and I believe they have heard the cries of those people, because me as the area councillor, I'm just showing the concern over the welfare of my people. Because yes, somebody will say, no, let them go back to the market. Which market?
When approached, Sidus declined to comment on the matter. However, Council Public Relations Officer Volamba Nyambe says the traders are illegally occupying the area and the law provides for a process to appeal against the authorities' decision.
Whether or not somebody lodged in a complaint, it's neither here nor there. The issue here is that when you do something illegal, an illegality remains an illegality. So these traders have been given 28 days within which to appeal. That is, if you are not happy, if you are not satisfied with what has happened, so let them appeal within 28 days. We should be able to have a round table with them and then discuss the way forward.
For Camnet News, Afias Kaptula, Lusaka.
Thank you for staying with us, and right about now it is that time when we get to introduce to you our guest for the day, and today to help us discuss various issues and also pertaining to the president's speech last week Friday when he was officially opening Parliament. Who's going to help us discuss this issue is Luena Member of Parliament Muvita Anakoka. Welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and it's good to be back.
Good to be back indeed.
Yes.
And we want to just also look at the presidential speech, first of all. How would you describe it? I'll just give you a blunt question. How would you describe the president's speech? Did it inspire any hope?
Thank you very much for giving me a blank check so that I can just fill in the numbers. The president's speech was extremely inspiring, and I can give you a framework of why it was a very inspiring speech. One, because of how it was structured. You see, what the president did was, first of all, to give us a little glimpse of where we have come from. Because you cannot talk about the future without talking about the history. If we don't learn from our past, then we'll be bound to repeat the mistakes of the past, and we will miss the good lessons of the past. So he gave us a little glimpse of the past, where we've come from. Fortunately, or unfortunately, this is a past that we all know. He then gave us a report card of what has happened over the last 2 years. And that report card ended with the major breakthrough on debt restructuring. Because debt restructuring has been a big, big issue for the country over a number of years. It started long before the PF got out of power, or long before we got into power as UPND. Now, with the debt restructuring, a new beginning has been opened, a new page has been opened. But even within the context of the constraints of the debt burden, the president was still able to give a report card that contained major successes of what has been done in the last 2 years, much of which was to do with, first of all, financial prudence. Financial prudence is something that many people are taking for granted when you are talking about running the economy of a nation. But it is the reason why we had shortages of medicines and medical supply before. Because the government was broke. It is the reason why the country is littered with incomplete projects around the country. It's not in dispute. In my district, Limononga district, the new administration center is incomplete. Just yesterday on the floor of the House, the acting Minister of Infrastructure was being asked about the structures in Pemba. And eventually, I actually asked the question whether the ministry can bring a list of these incomplete projects from around the country so that we can have an understanding of the phased approach that the ministry is going to adopt, especially in the new districts. Why? Because the country was broke. Those infrastructures started. Roads construction projects that were started that were left incomplete. Contractors just abandoned on site because the government is not able to pay. You can't even count them. But amidst all this abandoning of projects all over the place, there was huge debt being accumulated at the local government and at the Ministry of Infrastructure and other ministries for various projects that couldn't be funded. All this was because of lack of financial prudence. Financial prudence simply means understanding what your basket is and making conscious decisions on how to apply your resources accordingly. You can't spend 100,000 kwacha every month when you earn 10,000 kwacha. The mathematics just doesn't add up. And that's what we got ourselves into as a country. So it was important that the government reported on what the government has done so far in order to achieve financial prudence. The other one is macroeconomic stability. And macroeconomic stability, I'm sure this is something that every time we talk, maybe people even get tired of hearing it. But the management of inflation from double digit to a single digit is fundamental in the growth of the economy. We can't run away from it. Today, people are talking about prices of some goods being high and even saying unaffordable. And the government understands this and it sympathizes. The president said that. But let's take a second and look back. Ask ourselves, what would have been the situation if inflation was running at 20%? It means what you are saying as high now would have even been worse. So we need to understand how managing inflation was very, very fundamental.
Interesting issue. I want to just intervene. You mentioned the digit inflation.
Yes.
It was the target for 2022 budget and also the 2023 national budget. For 2022, partly we did have 2023 we did have a single digit inflation.
Yes.
But it has misbehaved again. But it is under the tenure of the UPND. But how are you
Indeed.
keeping it in check?
Indeed, and that's because the inflation is not what you don't switch a button. And that goes to just demonstrate that. You don't press a button and then it drops, and you press a button and then it increases. There are fundamentals, economic management fundamentals that you must keep in check. So one of them is the one we've just spent a few minutes talking about, which is financial prudence, making sure that you are managing your finances well. The other one I was going to add is exchange rate. So the little misbehavior you see from inflation, which is normal, okay? What is undesirable is to have runaway inflation. Secondly, it's undesirable if you have inflation and you even have got no idea why you are having inflation. So one of the inputs into inflation is the exchange rate. And you and I know there was a time indeed when the exchange rate, having been stabilized for many, many months, at some point it went a little bit high. Okay, that fed into inflation as well, and we saw that response. So when you see the economy beginning to respond to the macroeconomic decisions, to the tools, monetary tools, and monetary policy decisions, then you know the economy is beginning to behave normally. So you know when this happens, we expect this problem. So you now know where to actually manage the situation. And there's no wonder the government still makes it as a priority to maintain a stable exchange rate.
Interesting, Honorable.
Yes.
There's another aspect where we're still on this subject before we move out of it, where stabilizing the kwacha and also strengthening it is also interdependent on how productive we are as a country.
Absolutely.
Now, how is this administration working at that? Because it also depends on on how much we are importing and how much we are exporting. Now, if we continue to depend on our traditional export, which is copper,
yes.
But how do we maximize on non-traditional exports to make sure that probably if we have a stronger kwacha, even this inflation will be kept in check?
Absolutely. Well, we certainly need to. We can't run away. In fact, we can never grow our economy if we don't export. All right, but should we always rely on the natural resources that we are endowed with in form of copper, gold, and other minerals? No, because those are wasting resources. At some point, they'll finish. That's why you've seen mines run for 100 years, 150 years in some cases, and eventually it closes. Some of them is 20 years, 50 years, and then they close. That means as an economy, we need to create production in the country. And one of those things that the government has done, in order to just respond to the question you've asked, is the investment that was facilitated through private companies into fertilizer production. And the president alluded to that in his speech, that when we were importing urea, top dressing fertilizer, we were paying a higher price. Now that is being manufactured locally, the price has dropped, and the country has saved over $50 million. That is to respond to the problem you are just highlighting. If we are an import-dependent economy, we will be very vulnerable to what happens outside there. Whilst we cannot run away from importing things, we should make sure that we endeavor to maintain a reasonable balance between what we import and what we export. An economy that doesn't produce anything must have got an abundance of natural resources to sell. All right? And what we have in Zambia really does not constitute, it does not fit that profile. Yes, the mining sector contributes a huge component of our economy, but it's not like the oil nations. We are not Bahrain, you know, where you can live without anybody paying taxes, because just your exports from your natural resources is enough to run the entire civil service, is enough to provide all the social services. In Zambia, we're not in that situation. So we must be innovative, encourage local production. And that's why the government is putting in place many schemes, one of which, to encourage production in the agricultural sector, is the issue of providing a credit window. And the president said this particular credit window will actually specifically allow even people in the public sector, workers, to participate so that we can increase production. People have got 10 acres in Kanakatampa, in Mekango area there, but because they can't access little funding to do some form of mechanized agriculture, even just to put irrigation facilities at their farm, they don't have that money. So by opening this credit facility, we can increase production in some of the non-traditional sectors.
Talking about local production, 2 years in office as UPND, we have not heard you being vocal, so much vocal on the need for the country to go the industrialization way.
Industrialization is at the heart of this government, because there can't be any job creation if there is no industrialization. It's something that I can assure you, certainly the president talks about both privately and publicly. And that's why we need to now have real industrial yards. The way the issue of industrial yards was managed in the previous regime, and I know once we start talking about the previous regime, somebody I saw on another media platform that asked politicians, if you give me 60 minutes to talk, within 15 minutes I'll already be talking about another party. Here we are not talking about another party, we are talking about previous government. Because there's a distinction. A government is continuous. A party you can go and dissolve, you know, anytime you want. You just sit for your constitution and dissolve a party. A government you can't. Meaning that it's continuous, perpetual succession. So you can't run away from the decisions that were made by the previous government, even if you were not there. So the issue of industrial yards, the emphasis, there's one here in Lusaka. If you went there before to see how far we were in terms of achieving what it is that was desired when investment was made in those facilities, you'll find that we completely mismanaged. We have one in Mungu, in Western Province. It's not functional as we speak right now. Why? Because there was a lot of skullduggery that happened around the construction of these things. So how can you build your manufacturing capacity like that? When people just given an opportunity to go and build industrial yards, they start looting the same money. The reason the Mungu one is not working is because it's not complete. Yet on paper it's complete. But it can't be used. No one can operate from there. That's the point I'm making. Now, this government now has to spend more money to make sure those facilities are put in usable order, so that our small-scale manufacturers can occupy those places and they start producing. So it's a process that this government is determined to complete, because there is no way outside manufacturing. Your economy cannot grow.
The president is getting a description that he is a motivational speaker, speaking very well, but no action. And people are saying, again, you are reassuring us that minimum will reduce. But when? Because this was part of his address last week, and he did assure the nation that he is looking into that matter.
Yes.
And you are in the inner circles. What would be your take on that?
Well, I don't know whether the people are suggesting, the people who are saying that are suggesting that motivation is not part of leadership. Motivation is very much part of leadership. A motivated nation is an achieving nation. There shouldn't be any dispute about that. A demotivated nation is a non-achieving nation. So if at least they're giving credit in terms of how well he's motivating them and everybody else, that's a good start. But where we will disagree is to say there is absolutely no action. Because how can anyone describe the increase of CDF from 1.6 million to 28.3 million as all talk and no action? There is a mismatch there. certainly speaking for myself in the constituents, it is a construction site. Absolutely. Because when you go to Itukuwat in Luena constituents and tell them that this clinic you are seeing here is all talk and no action, when they know there was a bush barely 8 months ago, not even 8 months ago, barely 3 months ago there was a bush. Now I've got the clinic complete, only the staff house is remaining and the water reticulation system. It can't be a story. When you go to Mabiri Wat at Nalwamba, there was no classroom there. We are building a 1x3 classroom and 2 staff houses. That can't be all talk and no action. But let's move in. When you talk about free education, free education has significantly enhanced enrollment. And I know that sometimes when we are talking about these things here in Lusaka, the people that are, the town dwellers do not make that direct relationship between some of the things and the impact they have on the lives of the people. In the rural areas, where there was no bridge and people have been asking for a bridge, as I will give you an example of a bridge being constructed in Ushawad to connect the village of Lusinde to the other side of Namboma stream, where the fields are. When it's flooded, people are unable to access those fields. And when you go and build a bridge there, you are already enhancing productivity in these villages on the other side, because their fields are across the canal. So the relationship between what the government is doing and the impact it has on the lives of the people, maybe as it is seen in towns, is that people maybe don't see these things immediately. Because town dwellers, you are living a fast life. Us in the rural areas are seeing a massive improvement in the lives of the people.
When we talk about the Maslow hierarchy of needs,
yes,
we talk about physiological
absolutely
needs. First of all, what should come first of all? Someone should eat shima or they should have a toilet under CDF?
Beautiful. The issue of food, part of the very, very basic existence of a human being. This government understands the poverty levels. That's why in increasing the CDF, a certain component was made to empower cooperatives. Okay? Now, let me explain.
Just a fraction, cooperative is just a fraction of the entire constituency. For example, the entire Chawama, I don't know any person close to me who belongs to a cooperative.
That's what I was saying. You town dwellers are living a fast life. So you are missing out on some of these very big developments.
This cooperative, my argument is that if we just accommodate, let's say 90%, 95% of the people to appreciate, to see the value and the benefits, just like you mean. Because I understand CDF is a good component, good development agenda.
Yes.
But looking at how many people are in a constituency and
the impact it would have.
When you throw a stone, chances are high it lands on someone who's not aware about CDF and they're obvious about it, not belonging to a cooperative.
And one thing, just to, in addition to what Sopo has alluded to, don't you think you have pressed so much pressure on the Constituency Development Fund?
Interesting. So let's start with your observation of, but what's the impact of this CDF, especially when you are just talking about cooperatives? Because I was about to link the issue of empowerment funds to food security. Now, let me explain to you exactly how we are using it in our constituency. We are encouraging women in the villages to form cooperatives. And when they form cooperatives, they apply for funding to do one thing: to buy oxen. I was telling them, in fact, apply to buy 5 oxen, to buy an ox-drawn plow, to buy the rest of the equipment that goes with a complete structure that's needed for the use of ox-drawn implements. I even tell them to put some money to buy an ox cart. Now, let me tell you what that would have done. When they have got oxen and a plow and the rest of the equipment, in that cooperative, because this is how it works in the village. I need to bring it to your attention. has the oxen. They rely on those who have. And when they are hired to go around doing other people's fields, you can wait for 2 months before you can till your field. So when they now have got this equipment at a village level or 2 villages level, they are able to plan very easily on how to plow their fields. That's number one. Number two, because they are now using animal power, they are not plowing using hands themselves, just an ox and a hoe. They are able to plow bigger portions. This is real. When they are able to plow bigger portions, they are now able to produce, if they were harvesting 10 bags of maize, it can easily increase to 25 to 30. What that happens now is, because the 10 bags is probably what they need, 1 bag per month, even if you took it to 12 bags, you know, and you put another 3 for emergencies, you know, there are funerals, there are feasts, there are all those things. So you have got 15 put aside. If they have harvested 25, they still have got 10 that they can sell. Which means the other guy in the next village, who is a carpenter, isn't interested in farming, but is able to sell his desks to the constituents. He's able to sell the beds he makes to the community. When he gets the money now, he is able to find maize nearby to buy. He doesn't have to travel for 2 days to go and find a bag of maize to buy. That is food security being sorted right at the very local level. So people should not underestimate the importance of the empowerment component in the CDF. All that's needed is to make sure it is used for the purpose that increases security at household level there. So the scenario I've given you, at a higher level, would be equal to talking about a farmer being able to procure a tractor, which they had no access to previously. So all this money that is going in, and let me give you, for example, in Luena constituency, just last year, we gave 127 cooperatives. Now, yes, not all of them were buying ox plow and things like that. But those that have used the money for that purpose, and by the way, others have bought hammer mills. Okay, so now there is a hammer mill also nearby. Previously, they would have to hire somebody, scotch cut, to take their little maize to a mill, sometimes 1 day away. In other words, 1 day of traveling, come back late in the night, which they have to pay for. Now from the empowerment they are going to get, or they are getting, they can buy now the ox cart. They have the oxen. They are also able to plow bigger portions of their fields. That has a very, very big impact at the household level in the rural areas. Especially that now they don't have to pay anything for their child who goes to the nearby school. Previously, from the little they were harvesting, they would also have to find a way of putting aside 100 kwacha, 150 kwacha in order to pay PTA fees. Now they don't have to do all that. That is a major impact. So your question of what's important, food security at household level or having a VIP toilet. So we are dealing with food security through empowerment grants, as I've explained. But through the community projects, we are able to deal with the toilets. And I have just, we've built VIP toilets, facilities that never existed. At the primary school that I went to, and when you look at me, you say I'm not a young man. This is the primary school I went to. It was only this year that the school has seen VIP toilets. 6 of them constructed at Congo Primary School in Maviri Ward, in Mushtwambum area. So we are doing both.
As we come to the conclusion of our program this morning, we understand by 2030 Zambia seeks to become a middle-income prosperous country, and our first sustainable development goal number 1 talks about ending poverty in all forms everywhere. As the UPND, are you moving in the right trajectory to ascertain that peace is achieved?
Absolutely. And that is the CDF I've talked about, but we can quickly move to a level outside or higher than the CDF. The president spoke about the need to increase mechanized farming. What that is going to do is now at the mid-level, you know, the small scale, not peasant, because the ones I was describing earlier really are peasant farmers, but who we want to move to the mid-level and move those mid-level farmers now to semi-commercial, as it were, through increased mechanized farming. What is that again going to do? Increase hectareage coverage. That means we are able to produce a variety of crops which will increase our exports to the neighboring countries. The president gave statistics of some of the agricultural crops that are being exported or products, which includes even in fresh vegetables, fresh flowers. All that is because people would have access to funding to enable them to produce that. The other thing that probably I shouldn't forget is the government is employing so many extension workers in order to make sure that our farmers have got access to technical advice on how to manage their crops so that they can increase output. All this is to deal with the goal number one there. Eliminate hunger in all forms. Because a hungry nation cannot be a productive nation in anything. We are talking about successes in sports. You can't do that when you are a hungry nation. The president spoke about us qualifying for the Africa Cup. After how many times a motivated nation qualifies for major sporting tournaments?
Thank you very much, Honorable. Would have loved to go on and on and on. The conversation was getting better and finer, but this is where we have to call it a day on the Camnet Breakfast Show. We hope to engage further with the Honorable to discuss further national matters. This is where myself, Patrick Soko, and Miriam Kaimba have to excuse the screen, but remember to always keep it on Camnet TV, because Camnet TV is not just another channel.